I think the best way I can change anyone's thinking is by making my business model succeed. We have a very robust culture in our company. We're very aggressive. We are very lean and entrepreneurial. None of those values, in my view, are at odds with conscious capitalism. When we can demonstrate that, we can grow in the market, say faster than our category, which we are. We can deliver returns to our investors that are better than the standard returns that makes them more interested, and it helps prove that this all works. So we hold ourselves to a high standard in business. And I think when we can succeed and others like us can succeed, makes it, in a sense, it also makes it hard for others not to follow.
What if healthy food could nourish both people and the planet? Seth Goldman, founder of Honesty and chair of Beyond Meat, is a pioneer in building brands that challenge everything we know about food, business, and sustainability. From exposing a broken food system to proving that delicious meat alternatives can be mainstream, he believes business is the most powerful force for change, and he's here to prove it for you to believe it. Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism, the podcast where I, Claudia Thomas, decode the success of for-profit impact businesses through the stories of their founders. Our goal is to inspire you towards a purpose-driven career, because life's too short for boring jobs and soul-crushing corporations. Quick note before we get back to the episode, just give me 30 seconds of your time. Two things. The first is a huge thank you for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to me. And the second is that we are just getting started. If you enjoy what we do here, please join the 14% of people that listen to this podcast regularly and follow us on this app. I promise to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I can, now and into the future. Thank you. Seth, welcome to Reinventing Capitalism.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Seth, you have attended very prestigious universities. You went to Harvard, you went to Yale. You were brought up in the US, but for what I've researched, you lived in China, you lived in Russia, you've always worked in you've also worked in politics, and then you became a serial entrepreneur. So before becoming an entrepreneur, I want to understand which of those life experiences you consider most pivotal in shaping your mission-driven worldview.
Yeah, I would think it really started with the way I was raised. I grew up in Wellesley, Massachusetts, which is where my father taught at Wellesley College and my mother taught at Boston University. So being the son of two professors who had global studies, one economics, one history, I had a big worldview as I was growing up. And I think also had a feeling that I was expected to do work that mattered, and that we should be concerned with what's happening in the world, what happens to others. It's not an inward view, it's more of an outward view. And so I always took that as a given in whatever my career was going to be. As you mentioned, I worked in government, I've worked in the nonprofit sector, and of course in the private sector. And even though I do work in the capitalist economy, I think of myself as an activist much more than just a straight capitalist.
And how did they teach you that? So as I'm picturing like parents listening to this, how can you teach your kids to be more thoughtful and intentional?
The biggest way any parent teaches their children is through how they live. You can talk all you want, but it's how you live. And both of them were both activists themselves in their own way. My father spoke out a great deal about the way that Russians and Soviets were treated in the Soviet Union, and in particular Russian Jews. And then my mother, as a scholar of China, was a strong defender of academic freedom in protecting Chinese intellectuals. And but they also did quite a lot of really, I'd say, serious research and high quality work as well. And so I think I modeled that.
No, absolutely. And if you're aware that you haven't gotten that from your parents, what can you do to become more aware?
Well, you find people who are doing work you admire and learn about them if you can connect with them. Today it's much easier to connect and follow people who are doing work you admire because there's resources like LinkedIn and others where you can really learn.
Yeah.
Almost on a weekly basis, what somebody's up to, what they're thinking, how they talk about it, what they're doing about the issues they care about. So it really is we have much closer access now to the people we aspire to be like.
That's true. So traditionally, governments, nonprofits, foundations have addressed health, sustainability, social, environmental problems, you name it. How can businesses create lasting change in ways governments, nonprofits, foundations cannot?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're seeing in the United States today is you can't count on the government to address the issues you care about. As we've seen a pullback from really being a global player and even a domestic player in terms of health issues. And so I think it's really incumbent on business to address these issues. So for Just Iced Tea, certainly with respect to international development, we take our work and our sourcing very seriously. And as you know, we source a lot of our tea. Well, all of our tea comes from countries that have much lower standards of living. In particular, Mozambique is one of the poorest countries in the world. So when we buy from Mozambique, we make a point of all our suppliers to make sure it's fair trade certified, which means not just that there's humane working conditions and fair wages, but that we're also investing money back into these communities to help them develop economically. And this is not a subsidy that isn't market-based. I really believe it is market-based. It's our cost of goods still have a rigor to them. We need to be competitive as a business, but we can really address basic needs in these communities by the way we source and partner with them. And then in the United States, when we sell a product that's healthier, that has both organic ingredients and less calories, we can help uplift and promote the health of our consumers. And that's important as well.
Do you feel that taking care of the supply chain from inception, so from like the farmers that work in Mozambique, do you feel that by taking care of that in the long term, you are seeing a bigger growth than looking at the profit or the growth in the short term?
It depends how you think about the long term. I mean, there's no question when we buy organic and fair trade, it does cost more. But, for us, we think these are important investments in long-term partners.
Yeah.
We also believe that, tea is a very inexpensive commodity. So we're buying extremely high quality tea, some of the highest quality tea in the world. But when we buy it at scale, we can afford to make these investments in these communities and support them. And it also, I think is meaningful to our consumer. So we don't feel like there's a trade-off there.
Yeah. That's not what a lot of businessmen would say, though. I feel that...
Right. If we were just trying to optimize profit, we wouldn't be doing that. There's no question. Yeah. And we are looking to certainly expand our margins as we grow. And we make it clear to our partners, look, as it's different if we're buying 1,000 pounds versus when we're buying 1,000,000 pounds, we expect different margins. And they understand that too. But the goal is when we get to 1,000,000 pounds that we're really bringing the community along with us and helping them develop. And so, they're going to need, for a community to grow from 1,000 pounds to 1,000,000 pounds, they're going to need more infrastructure. They're going to need more capacity. And so we have to be partners with them and sharing, how we grow together.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, one of the thinkers that has influenced my own thinking, it's Michael Porter. And he talks about shared value a lot. And that's the one thing he says, that even if you increase wages to your farmers, for example, you give them more business and therefore they need more infrastructure, and then you reinvest in the community. And that's kind of like a domino effect where everyone is better off. However, again, like a lot of business people right now would still think that that would mean shrinking margins and therefore they wouldn't go for this solution. How should business people should think instead? Or how would you convince someone to change their thinking?
I think the best way I can change anyone's thinking is by making my business model succeed. So if I can demonstrate that we can grow aggressively as we are, and we can do that in a way with margins that continue to expand as we grow, that to me is the best argument, the best proof that I would need to convince somebody.
Honestly, totally. But we don't have enough entrepreneurs like yourself yet.
We're working on it.
But we're working on it, exactly. So let's go back a little bit in time to the first company that you founded, which was Honest Tea.
Right.
It offered healthier beverage compared to these super sweet big sodas, but you claim, or you worked on not sacrificing the taste of the product. What was the problem that you were addressing in terms of the health of these super sweet products?
Yeah, when we initially started in 1998, the average bottled tea on the market had 100 calories per serving, which is an extremely high level. And it's like, 6 or 7 teaspoons per serving. So very high. And for my personal taste, it was too sweet. And obviously, for the consumer, that's more sugar than they need. It's as much sugar as they need in a whole day in just one serving.
Yeah.
So we were offering something that was much less sweet. And that was just the initial point of difference. And we did, initially, I would say in the natural foods category, we got some traction, but to the mainstream, it was too not sweet. It
Really?
was not sweet enough. And so we had to kind of evolve a little bit to what we call just a tad sweet. So somewhat
Right.
sweet, but still much less than the rest of the consumers had. And there we found we really grew with that profile. But then we also added in organic, and then we added in fair trade. As we learned more about the supply chain, we realized that we could do these things, and they were important to do, especially as we called ourselves Honest Tea. If we really wanted to live up to that claim, we needed to continue to evolve the supply chain.
And what came first? Did you already knew that you wanted to be so honest and contribute so much to the whole supply chain, or you first build a company and then be good?
In our very first business plan, we had a statement about aspirations for social responsibility. So, of course, we couldn't claim anything in the business plan because hadn't launched the business yet, but we did say we would aspire to do right by the consumer in terms of offering them healthier products, to do right by the environment in terms of trying to find ways to lighten our environmental footprint, and do right by the supplier communities. Of course, at the time of launching the business, we didn't know really about organic as a standard that could be applied to the whole product, or we didn't know about fair trade because those supply chains weren't really built. But as we grew, we started to bring in more organic ingredients whenever we could find them, and eventually more fair trade ingredients as well.
So you build honesty, you implement fair trade initiatives, and the whole more honest, transparent supply chain, better wages for growers. And then at some point, you sell honesty to Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola first bought a 40% stake for $40 million, if I'm correct, and then bought the remaining for an undisclosed amount. So first thought that comes to mind when I read this, wasn't that selling the company to the devil?
No, at the time, Coca-Cola had the aspiration to become a company that they called Beverages for Life. So they wanted to be much more broad than just selling soda. And their vision was that Honest Tea and Honest Kids, which was an organic kids drink we developed, could become $1 billion brand. And so that was their aspiration. And, my goal and the way I think about business is it's great when you can have an impact. It's even better when you can have a bigger impact. And so, if we believed that what we were doing at Honest Tea and Honest Kids was meaningful, then we should do more of it. And we felt the best partner to bring it to scale was the world's largest beverage company. And so we did see expansion or what I would call the democratization of organic. And even though, of course, I'm skipping ahead, but it was unfortunate that Honest Tea got discontinued,
Yeah.
Honest Kids is still thriving inside Coca-Cola. And now it is close to, I'd say, at least $500 million as a brand in the marketplace. And it's carried in McDonald's and Wendy's and Subway and Chick-fil-A. And so Honest Kids today, I believe, is the most democratized organic product in the United States. So what I mean by that is, when somebody goes to McDonald's and they want to buy their kid a Happy Meal, they're not saying, oh, let's get organic. They just choose the Happy Meal, and Honest Kids is the default product. So by default, millions of young people are being exposed to organic drinks where they never would have before. And not just that, they're getting a much lower calorie drink. Honest Kids is a 35 calorie juice box. It replaced an 80 calorie juice box. So just alone, that's a 45 calorie differential. They sell over 200 million units a year of Honest Kids at McDonald's. So they're just that part of the transaction helped remove over 1 billion calories from the American diet. So, of course, it's disappointing that Honest Kids got discontinued, but I still believe partnering with a company like Coca-Cola has the potential to magnify and expand the impact greatly. And I believe that has happened.
No, I totally agree. And I see your point where at the end of the day, if you're doing something good, you want to do it as much as possible. But I do speak with entrepreneurs that say that they don't want to maybe partner with such like consumer facing companies because their product, might be changed or they might get ruled or like compromised.
So but what's important and noteworthy is that Honest Kids is as organic as it was. There's been no compromise to the integrity of that product. With Honest Tea, Of course, it ultimately got discontinued. So that was the ultimate compromise. But even though Honest Tea struggled inside Coca-Cola, there was never an attempt to weaken the standards, right? So they never said, okay, well, we won't do organic or we won't do fair trade or we'll make it sweeter. Yeah. So, like I say, they didn't compromise the standards, and that is a consolation. And then ultimately, for me, it worked out. Of course, I was disappointed when I got the news about Honest Tea being discontinued, but on the other hand, it created an enormous opportunity for me.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So for entrepreneurs that might find themselves in the same situation, what did you learn, and how can they rationalize whether how to make that decision?
So one of the key things for Honest Tea and the Honest brand is that the values of the brand were embedded in the product, right? But meaning it's a third-party standard. There was organic and fair trade. It wasn't just we do things that we think are good or make us feel good. We have a commitment to third-party verified standards. And the reason that's important is because if it's subjective, right? Let's say we give whatever we can to charity, then whatever profits we have to charity, then somebody could say, well, it's not profitable. They charge some overhead number. There's no profit, so there's no donation to charity. But if you say we're committed to organic, that is, you can't compromise that standard. You either are organic or you're not. And same with fair trade. You either are fair trade or you're not. So to me, having these third-party verified standards is very important. And even, there's some debate now, is B Corp, enough of a standard? And there's a lot of folks who would argue it's not. So it really is important to have third-party claims, that are on the product, specific to the product, that can be verified.
Something that was also very interesting to me was that you started Honest Tea with a Yale professor.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Yeah, so Barry Nailbuff was my professor at the Yale School of Management. We were taking a course on competitive strategy, and the case study we looked at was the Cola Wars. So we were looking at beverages and this whole idea that these companies are competing, selling brown fizzy liquid, but maybe there's other ways for them to compete. And so, of course, the other way that we identified was by having drinks with different sweetness levels. And Barry was very excited about this idea and proposed we make some samples and do focus groups. This was when I was a student. I'm like, I got to find a job. I like the idea, but I can't do anything about it. It was only after I had graduated and 2.5 years out, sort of came back to this idea after I had gone for a run. And I went to a beverage cooler and said, there's still no drink out here that's going to quench my thirst. And then I reached out to Barry and I said, as I think about that case study, I realized this is still an opportunity. And now I'm ready to do something about it. And Barry had just come back from India, where he'd been doing a case study of the tea industry and had identified, the idea and come up with the name Honest Tea. So it was he's still a wonderful collaborator and friend. He's, a co-founder on Just Iced Tea as well.
So it seems that attending one of the Ivy League universities gave you a lot, gave you even the start of your career. But attending not only an Ivy League university, but like an MBA or master's in general has changed a lot throughout the years. Would you recommend it for people that want to either transition to the world of impact or become entrepreneurs?
Well, yes, it absolutely played a huge role in my personal career evolution. And as the son of parents who are both professors, I certainly have placed a great deal of emphasis on education. Education is the key that can unlock opportunity for anybody. And this goes, of course, why we put so much emphasis on investing in the schools and the supplier communities. We come into a lot of these tea gardens without education. You'd have illiterate tea pluckers, and yet their children are learning on computers, connected to the internet, connected to the world. So I always encourage anyone I talk to, especially, but my children as well. If you have the chance to get more education at the highest level, it's going to create more opportunity for you. So I'm a strong believer in that. And obviously it certainly was the case for me. And I think the other piece is it's not just the education, it's the people you interact with, so that as you exchange ideas or as your career evolves, and certainly the case with me, so many times I'll circle back and I'll meet somebody who I had known from college or business school who's in a relevant role. So getting connected to just thoughtful, creative, interesting people is another benefit of being at a great institution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I challenge this because there's data that shows how much difficult it is to find jobs just after attending one of these big, very renowned universities. And so I wonder whether if you've seen a change of, like how can they contribute to your career?
Well, I've never done a formal job search. I've never had a resume because I'm, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So for me, I have to rely on what I've learned and kind of the network of people I can learn from. And I feel very fortunate that I have still that network is, continues to serve me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, can I ask you a quick favor? Every week, we dive into the stories of founders that do more than just make money. Our mission is to prove that a career in impact can be both purposeful and financially sustainable. If you believe in creating meaningful work, share today's episode with one friend who's ready to make a difference. It would mean a great deal to me. Your support is what keeps this show alive and growing. Thank you. Beyond Meat, I'm super impressed about what I've learned. For the audience, for the people that don't know it, it's a tech-driven company that uses innovation to recreate meat. You joined in 2013, you joined the board, and then in 2015, you became an executive chair. How do you move from honesty to Beyond Meat? Tell us about that transition.
Yeah. So my family had been vegetarian since our oldest son was 13 years old. He's now 32. So it's been a while. And we were always happy with the decision from an ethical perspective, but we, maybe sometimes we're disappointed from a taste perspective. We'd go to a cookout and the veggie burgers would always be so disappointing. And we didn't become vegetarian because we didn't like hamburgers. We became vegetarian out of a belief. And so we still wanted to be able to enjoy the kind of products that we used to love as our kids were growing up, as we were growing up. And my wife happened to read the article about Beyond Meat, looking to expand in retail. And I knew she wanted to say, she said, if you can help this company succeed, it could be great for all of us. I certainly had a lot of experience growing brands in retail. So I sent an email to info@beyondmeat.com and just said, if there's any way I can be helpful, I've learned a lot about launching and scaling a brand, especially in retail. And they reached out right away. They needed some help.
Wow.
And so that's how I got involved as both an advisor, then investor, and then, as you say, executive chair. It was it's still I'm still chair of the board, and it's been a wonderful journey, obviously with bumps along the way. But, it's true. It is a tech-driven company, but it's also a mission-driven company. And
absolutely,
those aren't mutually exclusive. You can be both. And so for us, it's a recognition that, look, our planet just simply will not support 8 billion people eating an animal-based diet the way we do in the United States. We have to diversify our diet. Plants have a much lighter environmental footprint, but plants on their own, the way is there's a lot of cultural barriers to making an entirely plant-based diet accessible to people. So we have to find new ways to make plant-based diets more accessible. And so that's part of what Beyond Meat has been doing. And it's really expanded and again, democratized access to plant-based diets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very interesting how optimism of the company has changed throughout the years. Because in 2019, when the company IPO'd, it was one of the hottest IPOs of all time, yes. I believe. It grew like 800% from its IPO price. What do you think reflected the optimism at that time?
Yeah, there was this new sense of possibility. Wow, maybe we really can change people's diets, and recognizing that meat is the largest category in food. It is at the center, literally at the center of our plates. And so if this could be the company to help make that happen, that would be a transformative company. And so especially the recognition that the technology keeps iterative, right? It keeps getting better. So the products we were eating in 2019 would continue to get better, continue to cost less as we continue to evolve. So this sense of possibility and impact. And then I think the other thing, as we told the narrative, if you looked at the dairy category, back in 2019, the dairy category was about 13% of it was plant-based, meaning so if you could apply that same model to the meat industry, where only less than 1% of it was plant-based, if 13% of it became plant-based, that's worth billions and billions of dollars. That certainly was a precursor of what could happen in the meat industry. And by the way, I still think it will happen. It's just taking, longer to make it happen. I would say as we've scaled, we've run in, there's been some pushback from the meat industry and some pushback to some, I would say, to some of the cultural issues involved in transforming people's diets.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, just a few years ago, then the stock went down. And I think my question, or I guess I wonder, like, how can it change so fast, right? Like, how can the food system be a reality where there's all this optimism, but then the
Mm-hmm.
market adoption and investor expectations change in the opposite direction?
Yeah. Well, look, it's not just the food industry. That happens across all industries. You could look at what happened with electric vehicles. There was early on a very moment of excitement, and then I'd say sort of a disappointment. And now I would say it's sort of coming back, and people recognize that electric vehicles are critical to how our transportation system evolves. The same with even you go back to early, think about whether it was Amazon and there were companies like that. They went through a boom and bust period. There were tons of them, and now just a few survivors. And I think the same thing is happening with plant-based meat. There was, this moment of excitement. They call it hype. A lot of companies came out chasing this. A lot of them have gone away, and now I'd say we're rebuilding back. And I would say we, especially in response to some of the attacks from the meat industry, we've reformulated, moved away, from some ingredients and moved toward others and different messaging as well.
So has this been in part because of the meat industry and how they've like targeted the alternative meat players?
Yeah, I would say so. I think there's also been, labels put not just towards plant-based meat, but towards other foods that are not accurate, but nonetheless applied. And so we need to respond and evolve our messaging and even our ingredients as well.
And how has your role changed from, say, the IPO time
Yeah.
till now?
Yeah, so I was executive chairman from 2015 to 2019. And then as we professionalized our staff, I transitioned to just chairman, which is a non-officer of the company. And that freed me up to go back and launch what has become Just Iced Tea. So I'm still very deeply engaged with the company, very close with the CEO and management, and obviously the board. But I don't have a daily role with the business.
Okay, awesome. You already mentioned my next question, which is your latest company, Eat the Change, from which you launched Just Iced Tea.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I think
Yeah.
it's a super inspiring story.
Yeah, so in 2019, as I was transitioning off of the executive chair role with Beyond Meat, I did some reflection on what do I want my next phase of my career to be. And I did think, well, should I be thinking about politics, or if I were to launch a business, what would that look like? And I, at the time, didn't think about going into the beverage industry because Honest Tea was still out there. And so I thought about if we could create a food company, snack company that really embodied the highest standards for sustainability, what would that look like? And I had been a co-founder of a restaurant chain called Plant Burger, PLNT Burger. And that chain had come up with this phrase, eat the change you wish to see in the world. And for me, that was like, oh, that's a great way to put it, because it is the case that whatever we eat is our biggest environmental footprint. More than anything is what drives our water footprint, our energy footprint. And so I thought, well, what would it look like if you created snacks that had eat the change mindset, meaning they'd be organic, they'd be plant-based, they would be water-efficient crops, and they'd be good, nutritious and nutrient-dense. And so I launched that with my co-founder from the restaurant, Chef Spike Mendelsohn. So initially we made a mushroom jerky, and then we made a carrot snack that was mainly for kids. And we were building that when we unexpectedly got this call, which was just 3 years ago now, from Coca-Cola telling us that they were discontinuing Honest Tea. And that triggered us to launch Just Iced Tea. And within a few months of Just Iced Tea hitting the market, it became apparent that Just Iced Tea was experiencing far more commercial success than our Eat the Change snacks. So we really morphed this company now. Eat the Change has essentially become Just Iced Tea.
Wow. Who would have said the company that bought you would discontinue your product so that then you could found
Yeah,
it again?
I never would have imagined it, but part of being an entrepreneur is being ready to adapt and adopt opportunities as they presented to you. So, within a week of the call from Coca-Cola, we understood this was a business opportunity we couldn't refuse.
No, absolutely not. So, the change is a mission to promote both people and planet friendly diets, and traditional food systems have mostly prioritized profit over health, transparency, or sustainability. As consumers, what should we be aware of in order to start making wise choices when it comes to the food we eat and consume?
Yes, well, it certainly starts with the nutritional properties, right? The nutritional label is a standardized way of understanding what's in a product. And so obviously, whether it's calories, sodium, fats, these are all things you can understand and incorporate into your diet in a balanced way. Beyond that, we always look at the environmental footprint. And for us, organic is the best way to understand the environmental impact of your product. Regenerative organic, even better, but organic is a great starting point.
What is
and
it?
Then
What's regenerative organic?
Regenerative is so organic. All organic agriculture means that it's grown without any chemical pesticides, chemical fertilizers. Regenerative is an extra layer that really puts an emphasis on soil health and recirculating, so that there's compost that's natural. All plants still need fertilizer. Create fertilizer from the ecosystem you're in, as opposed to bringing in synthetic stimulants. And so all the tea we buy is regenerative as well. And then the third part of it is, if you can, have a lens for the way the supplier communities are treated. And for us, that's fair trade. That means that not just the wages that we're paying to our farmers is fair, but that there's a portion of money going back to these communities. And so, as I said, we've invested in schools in the past. We've invested in healthcare. We're working on a project now to build a health clinic in Mozambique, where we source a lot of our tea, but also even in the infrastructure that the workers of the community identify as important for their future.
It's like common knowledge that organic food in general, it's more expensive. So my question is healthy food a luxury?
Well, that's going back to what I said about McDonald's. That's been why I'm so excited to see Honest Kids. When you bring it to scale, when we brought Honest Kids onto the menu at McDonald's, there was no price increase. And so it doesn't have to be a luxury. And I think everyone would understand that McDonald's is not a luxury brand. And so you have to be strategic and thoughtful and make investments. But I do believe organic is scalable. And of course, currently Just Iced Tea is more expensive than a lot of the bottled teas in the market, but we're also in a glass bottle, which is more expensive. We've just launched a can line at Target, and we're excited to see that grow. And again, that's a case where Target is a great democratizer of brands. It's making itself available to all types of communities across the country. And the goal there is to make organic and fair trade tea available at a lower price point.
But are you speaking specifically about processed food?
No, I'm just speaking about organic. What we sell is organic packaged goods. There are some organic crops that are more expensive, but I don't have as much exposure to produce.
Okay, fair enough. You are a proponent of reforming capitalism from within. And there's this concept that a lot of people talk about, which is conscious capitalism. What does conscious capitalism mean for you?
So it's really about starting with a set of values that you believe in, that I think will reflect your cares and concerns about the world, and then infusing that into your business model wherever possible. And so when you do it right, you don't even have to think about it on a daily basis. So I don't get up in the morning and I say, oh, am I going to try to be profitable, or am I going to try to grow our business? I just think about, I've already taken the steps to embed these values in our product. So as I said, because it's organic, because it's fair trade, because it's lower calorie, those are in the product. Then I get up every morning, I think about how can I sell more tea? How can I spread this to more places? How can I get it into these new accounts? So for me, that's, I don't want to say it's easy, but that's the most direct and obvious way to build a conscious capitalist business.
So for you, from what I've understood, the profit and the money comes as a consequence of doing things right.
Right. And look, we have a very robust culture in our company. We're very aggressive. We are very lean and entrepreneurial. None of those values, in my view, are at odds with conscious capitalism. I think, part of the reason we're so aggressive is because we want to prove this can work. And
Yeah.
we expect a lot of each other. And that's that without apology.
Because right now, business success, it's mostly understood by financial success. How do you see success changing in the next, say, 10 years?
Well, we certainly value financial success as well, because when you ask me, how do I convince others to do this? The best way I can convince others to do this is by succeeding with the business I'm in. And I think when we can demonstrate that, we can grow in the market, say faster than our category, which we are, we can deliver returns to our investors that are better than the standard returns that makes them more interested, and it helps prove that this all works. So we hold ourselves to a high standard in business. And I think when we can succeed and others like us can succeed, makes it, in a sense, it also makes it hard for others not to follow, right? And I go back to the Honest Kids example, because it is so widely out there. I hear stories of parents telling me, we have a birthday party and everybody has to serve Honest Kids. You get a kind of a bad look from other parents if you're serving sweet drinks. Even the same with kids' soccer games. So these are great, and there has been, you've seen the whole category of kids' drinks has lowered their calorie profile. It's not just because of Honest Kids, but because Honest Kids succeeds, it shows it can be done.
Yeah. So do you have like a short answer to like other success metrics than financial? Like say that in 10 years, if you go to the stock market, is there a world where we can see other success metrics than, say, revenue?
I think the standard is still going to be, revenue, growth, and return on investment. But I think there will be more companies that embody these values that are doing that.
Let's hope so. I have one last question for you, Seth. It's been almost 40 minutes and I feel like I've been speaking to you for 5. So I think the last question is, if you had to do something different tomorrow in terms of starting a business, what would it be? What's an overlooked business opportunity?
I'll tell you one business I really love seeing, and it's not one I feel the need to get into, but I've just had so much fun watching, is a good friend of mine. Jessica Rolfe created this company. So she was a co-founder of a organic baby food company, Happy Baby. And I was the founding board member of that business, and we helped grow it. It sold to Danone, and now it's expanded. It's made organic baby food much more widely available. After she left Happy Baby, she launched a new company called Love Every. And it started as a toy company for babies. And it's reframed the whole model of how young children learn, because it's a subscription model. As parents have babies, they get these Love Every gifts, and then new toys come every few months, but then there's learning materials that come with it. And then there's seminars that help parents think about what kind of diet you should be, how to feed your child. And so they've become this wonderful resource, and it is incredible to see. I now have a granddaughter who is a Love Every baby. And so seeing how her exposure to this company has helped provide her not just with toys that are not cheap and not electronic, but very much based on learning theory. Mm-hmm. And then to see even the books that are coming out from this company, but also I see my daughter-in-law really paying attention to how Love Every gives guidance around diet and around what to expect and how you raise your child. That's just such a wonderful new way of interacting with the parents and ultimately with the child. So that's a business I'm excited. I think is just doing a great job.
That's awesome. I think I have to get Love Every on the show.
Yeah, you should. They're in Europe now as well. So that's great to see.
Awesome. I will definitely reach out. Well, Seth, thank you. Thank you so much. I love your energy. It's what I've told you before the call. It's like you never stop working on things. And we definitely need more entrepreneurs like you to prove that conscious capitalism, it's possible. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. Wonderful to be with you.